For me, the concept of royalty is abhorrent. I want to ask you, for me, the concept of royalty is abhorrent.
Okay, all right. In the Middle East, the Arab Spring occurred mainly in the countries that had presidents. And now presidents should be freer and closer to being elected than the king who is born to rule.
Divine right to rule.
But very often in the Middle East, the president is the man who killed the king or the son of the man who killed the king. So people kind of have this respect for the benevolent king, especially in places like Morocco, very peaceful kingdom in North Africa, next to Algeria that had a civil war, killed 1 million people. Tunisia had the Arab Spring 10 years ago. Egypt had a revolution and then a counter-revolution. You've got a little pocket, a haven of stability because there is a monarch who is born to rule, and people respect that. And if you're born into it, maybe you would honour the duty more than someone who struggled and was power hungry. I mean, all our politicians must be power hungry people, right? If that's what they want.
That's an interesting thing. Many things you said are quite interesting. So about politicians being power hungry, I mean, well, quite possibly. I mean, it might be a feature of all people, but another thing is that I imagine some people maybe a lot of people genuinely go into politics thinking that they want to make positive difference, and maybe they actually do. I mean, they're very commonly derided.
A few do. I don't like the term in power, the Tories in power, Labour's in power. It should be in office.
Right,
I think we should be careful about the kind of language we use. I mean, and it's always a regime when we don't like it, and it's a government when we do like it.
Oh yeah.
The regime in Syria, or the king in Saudi Arabia.
Language is power.
Language, and it's so subtle that we don't realise sometimes that.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Derogatory and euphemistic language. Very, very powerful. It's the science of propaganda, the science of symbolism.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But anyway.
Despite my defence of royalty, I would always have described myself as a Republican in the sense that I thought we should do away with the monarchy and have an elected head of state like everyone else. But in recent years, I have kind of relaxed on that.
Well, that's interesting. Why? Why would you?
Because
I'm
I think
confused here.
Well, it's does the Queen have any power anyway?
Well, I mean, I might just take it a bit deeper. Where does power lie? Power lies in the ability. Well, there's different levels of analysis, but one in the physical realm, the ability to influence other people, and the ability to influence nature, so-called. And to do that, genuinely, you need money. You need the ability to express that. You could say land. You could say ability to produce things. These things. Yeah. I'm just alluding to the fact that I think all power ends up coming down to the ability to use force, or the ability to get other people to use force for you, which would be the richest people in the world, would be multinational corporations, and many things.
But are they influential because they're rich, or are they rich because they're influential?
Well, it's both. It has to be both.
Yeah.
I just mean, just to cut short, I think politics is a facade. It's a game.
Yeah.
I don't think it's real.
Where is the power really lying then?
Well, the people that have got vested interests behind the scenes, that are lobbyists or people who assassinate, people who step out of line.
Okay.
Those guys, for sure. It's just like anybody else you know, just on a smaller list scale.
Do you have a name for this group of people?
It's just anybody.
Okay.
It's anybody who has the will and the means to do it.
And there are many of them, and they're pulling in many different directions, and it's just whoever comes out on top.
It might be like that. There might be collectives that have interests that align. I'm very open to that idea. Who knows?
I think there are interests that do align, but it's perhaps not as a united front as I once thought. People mention that I'm a tinfoil hat wearer or a conspiracy theorist. And we talked about the reptilians last week. Whether that's literal or metaphorical, I'm sure there is a truth in the notion that there are groups of people with great influence who may be hidden and are not Theresa May or Donald Trump or the face of.
I'm certain of that.
Yeah, of course.
I think it's.
Of course.
I think it's very interesting to see. Well, look at it this way. What could be the motivation? There's many motivations, but what could be the motivation for somebody criticizing you, for example, for questioning reality, for imagining other ways of being, or imagining things behind the scenes that could be? What's the rationale for that criticism? There's multiple. I think the primary one, maybe I'm wrong, you tell me, is fear. You don't want to consider that your entire life might be false. It could be you could be living a lie. You don't want to acknowledge those other possibilities, and maybe that's justified in some sense. Like the existential problem. If somebody has a devout belief system and it makes them comfortable in life and gives them security, and they're not harming others, should you go and attack that? I think absolutely not. That's one of my quarrels with Pavlov.
Yes, he wants to tell people that God's not real.
Right. And he's not here to defend himself, so we will just leave it at that. We've talked about it in person.
Yeah. Hope you enjoy where you are today, Pavlov.
Yeah.
Your day out.
Pavlov's Day Out, it sounds like a movie.
But okay, on that issue, what if the people like myself who question reality and are open to the idea of these aliens, entities, or whatever it might be, that gets you called a crackpot and there's a tinfoil hat wearer. What if I'm just settling for an excuse as to why my life is no good, rather than blaming myself? Oh, I can't win. There's a conspiracy.
Oh well,
we'll never get the government we deserve because the same side will always win. Whoever you vote for, the government gets in.
Oh, I see.
Isn't that disempowering? Rather than saying, right, I'm gonna run for local election, I'm gonna run for leadership, I'm gonna be the Prime Minister, I'm gonna make the difference. If I say, oh well, my hands are tied because these reptilian aliens are running the
I understand you. That's one way of thinking about it that I imagine could be common. It could be used as a buffer towards responsibility, as you're saying. It's like, well, I can't do anything about it because of this. Okay, sure. I think that's a poor way of living. As I've said in previous times, you're going to make, like Stoicism demands, you control what you can control. And that's the scary part. When you actually realize that small changes in your life can have massive consequences, that actually gives you a kind of scary feeling of power, because you realize that these small little actions can have huge changes, can affect a lot of people, and you might not want to assume that responsibility. Never mind changing the government. What's that all about? You have to sort your own things.
Well, I think the most important changes are changes in attitude. Because every little action on its own will seem like nothing. There'll be almost no point.
Well, take it like this.
It.
You do physical training, right? You talked previous time about MMA, which I'll ask you about later if you don't mind. It's interesting for me. But we'll take the context of training. Well, I'm not gonna go and train today because it doesn't matter. But it's obviously a long approach. You play the long game.
That's
the body. It's discipline of the mind and body.
And it's what you can do consistently will work. People get into the idea of, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to go every day, it's going to be great, and they keep that up for a couple of months and then they quit, they burn out. You're better to go twice a week and just keep going.
That's right.
Just keep going.
It's delayed gratification.
Delayed gratification. That's an interesting concept. Apparently the societies that progress the quickest are cultures where deferred gratification is prevalent.
Right, I would believe that. Yeah, absolutely. And that's something I think people should promote.
And people say that Europe advanced so much further because in order to survive I think we mentioned this before, in order to survive the winter, you had to conserve some food and not eat it all now.
I was thinking about something like this today. I was going to mention it to you. I think that, the anthropology of it is super interesting. Like, why do people develop differently? Why? And I imagine most of it's down to geography. Which is fascinating.
I think not only a north-south divide and the colder climate requiring more conservation and planning, but also I mean, cultures flourished near water.
Yeah, well,
Every
right.
capital city has a river through it. Seafaring people advanced. The British Isles was jutting out into the Atlantic. The Phoenicians were a coastal-based civilization across the Mediterranean. I think that explains a lot why certain societies advance more than others.
I would say so, or maybe become more expansionist. Like lack of local resources leads to expansion. People deride the idea of empire, maybe rightly so in certain senses, but in other sense you might say, well, what choice would they have? And there's different ways of looking at it.
Yeah, people say that Americans genetically perhaps are descended from people with that go-get attitude.
Could be.
And the native British people are the ones that stayed at home and said, we'll
It's an interesting idea. I imagine there's some truth to that.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, people went to America for different reasons, but I'm thinking of the Europeans that went there in the early days, the Pilgrim Fathers and such. They were people that wanted to discover the new world,
right,
as they called it.
Oh yeah, I think, well, for me personally, that's one of the most fascinating things you can do is to explore, to discover, to put yourself in a situation that's chaos. You don't know what's around the corner. You don't know what's there.
It must have been interesting to live in times when there were countries still being discovered.
That's right.
So-called discovered by Europe.
I think so. I've heard there's something I hear on the internet, and I don't like it. It's something like too late to explore the world, too early to explore the universe, kind of.
Okay. Why don't you like that?
Because I mean, well, the first thing is that we're already, by virtue of existing, we're already in the most fascinating adventure I can comprehend. The next thing is that, what have you personally done? It's like, well, because I can't explore Jupiter, there's not point in doing anything. Well, go to Alaska, see how long you'll live. You won't live long.
That's true.
Go there.
Yeah,
that's an adventure.
That's true.
Or go to the inner city in a certain time of night and see what happens. That's adventure.
Yeah.
Maybe not wise, but
no, you're right. There are many adventures still to be had here on Earth.